Good evening, New Bedford. It's Chris Resendes again, Chris Resendes Show, with my co-host Isaiah.
Good evening, everybody.
And tonight we have a couple special guests. One is a friend of mine since way back in high school. I don't want to say how long ago it was. A wonderful person who's got a tough story that y'all need to hear. Being that it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I felt it was very, very important to bring someone on. This is an important topic that we need to discuss and make especially young women aware of. And these days it seems like we need to let them know a little younger than normal, unfortunately. Jen is going to help us learn and see different views on the side of the abused and not the abuser. She's going to show us exactly what she went through, avenues of help, and she's going to tell us her story, which I've looked into a couple of her YouTube postings on her vlog, and it made me tear up a couple of them. No one should go through what this woman's gone through. She's powerful. She's stronger than I am, I can tell you that right now. And Jen, so awesome seeing you.
Thanks, Chris. Great seeing you too. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, trust me, it's my pleasure. You're doing us a great service by being here. The community needs people like you to come out and be strong the way you are. I know that we've talked about how hard it was just to even get out in public after the situation you went through. And the courage you show on just coming out and doing this is amazing. And it's great. It's a great story, and I just can't give you enough credit for what you do.
I know I'm helping people, so that's definitely a driving force to the whole thing.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your story, whatever you're comfortable with. I see you're pretty open in your vlogs about some of the horrible stuff you and your family went through.
Yeah, we've become open because we want other people to understand that it happens to everybody, and when it does happen, that there's nothing to be ashamed of. I was ashamed for years. Didn't even think I would ever be able to come forward or that I would live to come forward, but I did. And so that was driving force to all of this, is educating other people on what happens with the abused.
Now you set up a foundation. It's called the Help Save Foundation. It's probably what year now you've done it?
2
years. Wow.
2015 we
Gosh.
started, yeah.
That's awesome. I remember when you first did it, like you had shown people through your Facebook posts some of the stuff you had gone through. None of us knew. And then you started the foundation, and it was amazing. What exactly does the foundation do? Where is it based out of? What services do you provide? What events do you have that you can help young women with?
So what we do is, the SAVE part is actually an acronym. It's Survivors Advocating for Violence Education, and that's what we do. We educate. So we started off wanting to just be in the police departments and train upcoming social workers on what abuse victims go through so that they could better help us. My first experience in the police department was not good. I did not get the help I needed. Because I didn't get the help I needed, my abuser was actually able to go on and abuse 2 more women along with continuing to abuse me. So we thought it was very, very important that that's where it needed to start, with the police department, and making sure that women get the help they need and aren't kind of pushed underneath the rug. Luckily, the second time I came forward, I was able to get the help I needed, and we were brought into the safety. What we do is we started off going into the colleges and training upcoming law enforcement and social workers. But as time went on, we found that women started calling and writing emails and reaching out for help. So we've kind of branched out a little bit more, and we get a lot of phone calls and we get a lot of emails from family members and people going through abuse that need help, want someone to talk to, want to know what their pathways are to get the help that they need. The other thing that we do is we have started going into the high schools and middle schools and teaching the boys and the girls dating violence and the signs of an abuser, which has become very helpful.
Now, you said that the high school and middle school, I read a lot of statistics doing research for the show. And these are some antiquated statistics that, you know how that goes as far as abuse stats, you know, and you try to get the most current stuff, and they end up only feeding you 2012, 2013.
And that's because they don't have a lot, because a lot of people don't talk about it.
It gets unreported, exactly.
It's very silent.
And you're looking at 11 to 15% of high school and middle school students have already been physically assaulted by their significant others.
Absolutely.
by that young age. We're talking 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Yep.
Like I remember, like, you know, I don't want to say her name, but she was like feisty in middle school and she'd kick like people and all that stuff. But now looking back, you're like, man, I guarantee she's an abusive individual in a relationship.
Right.
And we didn't know any of that stuff coming up. And
Right.
there was no identifiers. There was no classes for us, you know, in health classes. Oh, don't do this. And, you know, we learned the dumb stuff, but we didn't really actually learn any of this stuff that actually was happening. It's been happening well before us.
Well before us, and that's exactly why we're doing what we do, because we're bringing that to the forefront. And it's surprisingly in the middle schools, and a lot of times with the boys, we hear a lot of questions about the court system, because I kind of go through everything.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in the juncture, I've been through the coming forward, the court system, the release, the everything. So when we talk about the court systems, there's a lot of kids that come forward that have a lot of questions. So it triggers what's happening and what they are going through for themselves at home and what they may have to come up for and do if something were to happen with their own families.
Yes.
So it is important on both, not only to teach them the right way to be, but also for them to understand that there are other children that are involved as they are and what they can do.
Now, when you go with your foundation, you said you go into colleges and schools. Are you in the New Bedford system at all? Do you do any work
We
with
haven't
the
gone
health
in.
guidance?
Yeah, no, not yet. We haven't gone into New Bedford. We've done some Fairhaven, we've done Bridgewater, we've done Taunton, but we haven't gone into New Bedford yet.
Now, when you do Fairhaven, you're dealing with middle school, high school. Are you starting at a younger age, or is it mostly the high school stuff?
No, we started in middle school this year, actually.
Perfect.
Yeah, we started in middle. We found that middle is really where we're seeing a lot of mostly verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's starting there, we figured instead of going right to the high school, we would start with middle school. So we did. We did the boys bob team last year, which was a running group, and it worked out really great. We were very responsive. We had a lot of questions that came out of those boys, so it was a good experience.
Awesome. Now, as far as the kids coming up to you and talking to you, I can only imagine that some of them would actually not have actually been abused, but are in abusive households.
Absolutely.
Do you have a lot of that, of kids that are just scared that, hey, my mom and my dad are doing this, can you help us?
Yeah, we actually had an interesting situation that happened with my older son, Hunter, last year. So he was in 8th grade, and he's a fun kind of kid. And there was another boy in the school that was a big kid, mostly known as a tougher kid. And Hunter doesn't talk too much about what happened. He doesn't talk too much about anything. I think it's very uncomfortable for him to have to say that his father was in jail for what he did to us.
Yeah.
So instead, he doesn't talk about it at all. So people just knew that his dad wasn't around. That's what they knew. And last year, somewhere along the lines, my impact statement, which I don't know if you had heard that. Right.
It's on YouTube.
Yes.
And we are going to put the link on YouTube.
Okay. So the impact statement had been played at the high school. And this boy's brother heard it and told his brother about it. So then now he heard it. And he walked out to Hunter and he hugged him every day. And this is like a big, tough kid.
Yeah.
And he said, "You're the toughest kid in this entire school with the things that you've been through and how you are." And I expressed to Hunter then, you have a relationship with him that you didn't even realize you had, because he probably has the same things going on in his own house.
Absolutely.
Had no connection with anybody else. And now the two of them are close because they have a connection that they didn't even realize they
Amazing.
had. So it is pretty amazing. I do love telling that story because it's such a wonderful, it was an eye-opener for Hunter to realize that
It's just- yeah.
he has a place in this world
And
and
he
what
has
he's
an
doing.
impact, and
He does.
in his past has actually helped out this kid's future probably.
Oh, absolutely.
And this child was acting out. You said he was being a bully and all that prior
Well,
to
yeah,
this.
not really being a bully, but he's just a tougher kind of kid.
Yeah.
You know, he's not someone that you would think to get feelings and emotions from. And yet,
He
for
was-
weeks, he was hugging my son every single day because he was showing his feelings and emotions because he could finally relate to someone.
I can see helping the adults. I'm a softie for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you could tell. Look at my hand right here.
Hey.
I tear up when I hear this stuff about kids. And the past couple of weeks, I keep talking about it's cool to help adults. And we just have this problem where we're just always helping adults, always helping
Yeah.
adults, always helping adults. And it's like fixing broken toys with antiquated parts. You can't really do it at a certain point. And what you're doing is, it's God's work by helping these children out. I just There's
hear
no,
that
there's,
all the
there's,
time.
there's no way to repay a person that helps a child come out of a situation like that. And now your son's doing it
I know he is.
through you.
Yeah.
You know.
And he and my younger son are actually pretty involved in what we do. In the projects that we've done in the past, the pocketbook project was huge. Then after they saw what happened with that and how big it was and how much of an impact it had on our community, for back to school last year, they said, listen, we want to do something for backpacks. Let's help the domestic violence kids get their school supplies, because the moms and the dads and whomever has the custody of the child, it's not that easy. So you're down a parent now. So he really wanted to make sure that we were providing for everyone, and we did. And now the next project that we're working on that we're hoping to have launched by next year is a Big Brother, Big Sister program.
That's awesome. What does that entail?
Well, what we've realized and what my boys have realized is, I'm a single parent now. So they don't have a father figure. Because of that, they miss out on some things. I'm mom. I can only be mom, and I can only
I see some of
teach
the
them
stuff
mom
you do with them.
True, but I'm a mom. I'm a boy mom is what I am. So they wanted to really implement a program in which other boys and girls could have what they needed. So a big brother, big sister. If they lost their mom, they have a big sister. If they've lost their father, some kids are so unfortunate that they lose one parent to jail and the other parent to murder. So we want to be able to provide a program for them that they have someone to look up to. They have some kind of older person that's going to kind of take them underneath their wing and say it's
role.
okay. Absolutely.
Take the role. I'd love to be involved
Very
in
important.
when that comes. The wife and I are really into taking in children these days.
Yeah, I can tell.
And he helps us more than he realizes.
See that?
He thinks it's just we're just helping him. That's not the case
That's
at all.
not the case.
He provides me with a perspective that I've never had. Isaiah and his friends have shown me a lot in the past couple weeks. Stuff I never saw. And I'm sure you go through the same thing.
I do, and that's part of why I do what I do. It's almost, I don't want to say it's a therapy to me,
Yeah.
but we do speaking engagements. I do speaking engagements at companies. They'll call and they'll say, okay, well, we have an idea, or we think that one of our employees is being abused. We need you to come in. We need you to play your impact statement. We need you to talk. By the end of those, we have 2 and 3 women that are coming forward. That's huge.
Now, I want to keep plugging away at your contact information throughout this interview. We're going to put it in, but a lot of people aren't really visual as well as hearing. Exactly, how do we get in touch with you at the Help Save Foundation?
So you can a lot we do through the website, which is the helpsavefoundation.org.
Okay.
And then we do have the Facebook page, the Help Save Foundation, which we do get a lot of messages from that way.
Perfect.
Otherwise, typically people will reach out to me through email or through message.
Friend of a friend.
Yes, and then it turns into phone conversations and meeting with people and figuring out what we're going to do.
It's fun and dandy that you're doing all this. You still have scars to heal.
Of course.
Are you continuing to get help for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, because there are certain things that are total triggers for me that aren't for others. But, there are some cases that come in front of me that I say, okay, well, I remember those days. Because it's interesting how you can be in a situation with 5 different women, all that have been abused, and yet all of their stories are so similar. Because it's the same kind of MO for each person. So there are certain times where I'll run into someone, or we'll be sitting there talking, and
yeah, you gotta be, oh my God, that happened to me, and it must bring
Exactly.
these feelings and these
It's
fears
tough.
back in your life again.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's horrible. Saya, you want to ask her a question, bud?
A lot of times, like, when you talk to women who have, like, been through that, they say, like, they felt trapped. Like, is that, like, a real feeling that you feel, like, while that's happening in your life?
Yeah, I'll tell you that my trappedness was complete fear. So you must have saw my last video. I'm not sure if you did.
I was gonna ask you if you could actually just go ahead and tell that story again. I
Okay.
literally teared up about your parents.
Oh, yes. So this is an idea of the entrapment. So within 6 months of meeting my abuser, I was ready to leave.
Yeah.
And I was forced into the vehicle. I wasn't living with my parents at the time. They lived in New Fairhaven, we lived in New Bedford. And By trapped, for me, was total fear because I was put in a vehicle and I was told that I was going to drive to my parents' house with him and he was going to murder my parents and I was going to watch. And he literally drove me within a block of my parents' home with me screaming, trying to jump out, trying to do everything possible to get away from him, that this is what was going to happen. And so once I saw that side, I realized I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
The second time that I talked about is he was in Florida, I was in Massachusetts. So you're talking about a long distance, 24 hours driving distance. And a woman had called the house that had been hanging out with him in Florida, and she told me. And so when he called, I said, listen, I'm packing my bags, I'm leaving. Well, he flew home on the first flight and rang the doorbell to his own house to make me answer the door to let me know once again that I was not going anywhere. So trapped. Yeah, you're trapped. You're trapped in fear. There are many more instances in which, you know, I felt as though I knew there was no way I could go. In fact, the situation that led to me coming forward, I didn't actually come forward until the next day because I literally didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether I should do it. I didn't know whether I was better off not doing it and just letting him do whatever he was going to do. And if I didn't make it, I didn't make it. Or if I should go to the police. And I literally sat in that parking lot for a long time trying to decide whether going in was going to be the last thing I was going to do or not.
It's amazing. I don't like forcing any type of bad thoughts in this, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this information out to these young, like today I haven't promoted a show like I have today. I've been pushing it everywhere. I've been asked, I bother them all day. I'm like, you need to put up a thing, remind 7 o'clock, we need young women to watch this.
I don't worry so much about bad thoughts, so don't worry about that.
All right.
Because at this point, in what I've already done for the last 2
You've
years,
talked about it, yeah.
this is what I do. This
I
is
know.
why, and that's why the video
Coming
blog
from
came
me,
out.
I
Right.
see you, and then I'm like, we talk like about this, that we're gonna work on something. We're gonna get your vlog out there. We're gonna get this, and it's been something that Josh will tell you. I've been telling him, hey, I want to get her on, and you start thinking about what you want to talk about, and there's parts of this that are uncomfortable, and a lot of people don't realize one of the parts of abuse is the sexual part of it, that you're being assaulted by this person who's trapping you.
Right.
Obviously, there's no connection at that point.
Right.
So for years, you're just getting abused sexually
Right.
by your partner at that time, or you're the guy who's doing whatever he is to you. A lot of people don't realize that's not the only part. Isn't just physical abuse, it's the sexual abuse that comes with it.
And it's the emotional abuse and it's the mental abuse, because I read a lot about, and I've met a lot of women who will say, well, you know, in the court systems, they said that there must have been a point in which I liked him because I have children with him. And what would have happened if you said no?
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, if
That's
your
huge.
story about getting
It's huge.
brought to see your parents getting killed,
Right. Right.
there's no anything else is fair game for this guy.
Absolutely. And once they know that that fear is instilled in you, forget about it because it's over.
It's part of the trap.
Absolutely.
It's a power issue, and it's not only something that they've been brought into. I believe that most studies show that these abusers have witnessed abuse.
It's a learned behavior.
It's a learned behavior. It's not something that just pops up. It's
No.
not a cold or hey, one day you're gonna. It's something they've seen and something. And sometimes I've read that it's actually progressed, that they watched their mom be not physically abused, but really mentally abused and treated badly.
Yeah.
And so they thought the behavior kind of like snowballed into physical abuse at
Right.
that point.
And that is so true. And we see that a lot as well. It is a learned behavior, which I'll tell you, of all the work that I do with the women and the men and domestic violence, the most important thing that has ever been said to me was by a resource officer at one of my son's schools, the older son. And he said, I just want you to know that you have successfully broken the cycle of violence. To me, it started at home for me because I had 2 boys.
Yeah, that was going to be that's where this was going.
Huge.
That's
huge.
where this was going.
Especially for my older son, because he spent, when the DA's office asked him how long he had been watching his mother be abused, he said, ever since I can remember. He was 12 at that time. I mean, he didn't remember anything but that. He remembered things that I had suppressed and had not even thought about for years. And as we were going through the court systems and the whole process, he was remembering all of these things that, of course, I remembered once he said them, but I couldn't believe that he had seen those things. I couldn't believe he had heard those things.
Yes.
And it wasn't that I was getting beat up every day. Sometimes he would just walk in the house and say things like, I'm going to slit your throat today. Or the worst one for me was he would walk in the house and say, pick a wall. And I would innocently think, for what? Pick the wall that you want your brain splattered on tonight. So now, even if I didn't get hit that night, all night long, I'm worried about what is going to happen to me.
What is?
So it's not just the physical, and it's not just that victims go through physical abuse all the time.
No.
13
It's the
years
torment.
wasn't all physical
That's
abuse.
why I asked you if you were still getting help, because
Yeah.
the cuts and the bruises,
Yeah.
they go away. It's the internal stuff that...
It's the
that's-
terrorizing.
It's the terrorizing.
And that's what I used to say all the time, is I was terrorized.
My main purpose tonight is to get your word out. In the most broken down, basic common denominator, what do you tell these young girls? What are the first signs to look for? All right, this is happening, you need to do this. Like, how can you guide them before they get too far along into an abusive relationship to get out of it today? What do you tell them? Like, how, you know what I'm trying to ask.
I do know what you're trying to ask. We basically, I really emphasize the fact that you should be treated with respect. Because anyone that has witnessed respect in their home and is going to care for you and love you is going to respect you. Any lack of respect it's a form of abuse to begin with. If for the young girls, if your boyfriend is texting you and he's swearing at you and he's calling you nasty names, there's no need for that. If he's wanting to know where you are and you're not there at a certain time, I deal with young girls all the time that are supposed to be in this area, but instead they went out with their friends and now they have a guy that's calling them 15 times wanting to know where they are.
I had stalking written down.
Absolutely, and it happens all the time. And I have actually seen it at the parks where I'll be walking past a young man, because I do a lot of walking, and I'll walk past a young man and I can hear him yelling at his girlfriend. And I'm thinking, what did she do on the other end? Like, what's the matter? Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? Those are signs. Whenever someone's trying to spend more time with you than you're allowed to spend with anybody else, that's a sign. That's a possessive sign. That's someone that's not going to let you go. So we really emphasize on those. And anger, anyone that's like flipping out really quickly. I mean, you want to stay away from them.
There are signs.
There are. And I didn't see those signs.
And every girl likes a bad boy at that
And
age.
every girl likes a bad boy. Yes, we're all guilty of that.
And
yes. But there's a line to be drawn between bad boy and someone that's going to be abusive.
You know, even as an adolescent male, you kind of beat your chest a little bit to be that bad boy because you think that's what the girls want.
Right.
And it's not.
It's
and
not.
I've been there, you know. I'm going to tell you a story about you that you have never heard. It's brought me to tears.
I'm going to tell you a
Talked
story
to our
about
good
it.
friend Matt about it.
Matt is actually, I'm very grateful for him. He puts a lot together through New York Life, and New York Life is one of our supporters.
Yeah.
So let me just say that when I do all these speaking engagements, it's non-paid.
Yeah.
We work solely on donations. So whenever I go even to an organization and they say, well, how much do you want for it? I say, well, you make a donation. Because regardless, I'm going to do it anyway. Because this
Yeah.
is what I want to do, and this is my
yeah.
passion. But if you want to make a donation, that's great. So I just want to say that Matt is awesome, because New York Life actually does make a donation to us every year.
Awesome.
In the name of Matt.
Him and I have talked about you. As you know, we're both, you know, he's our mutual friend. He did some graphic design work for you back in the day, I think
Yeah,
it
he
was. You know, and that's how you guys, we were always cool, but like, and I bought a fireplace from you guys.
You did.
And I went to your shop, and I met your husband. You introduced me to
Wasn't
this
my
guy.
husband.
Well, yeah, your
Yeah.
abuser at the time, I'm sorry. And you were a friend, and you were trying to help me that whole time, and you were getting beat and abused, and I didn't know, you know, and looking back at that, that really bothered me. That this was, when you came out,
Right.
that I could have helped you somehow, and I missed it. And it really, you know, it really, really, really bothered me for a long time. And then I you know, I play it back. I went there 3 times for that one transaction, and you helped me out a lot. And you were like trying to, like, you know, as a friend, hey, I'm gonna give you this price, and you hooked me up, you know, and I didn't do anything for you, and it really got to me. And I talked to Matt about it. He's like, man, don't do that, you know,
Right.
because being in the line of work I'm in, I'm always the protect
see
and
it.
save, you know what I mean, and help out and control. Like in corrections, it's like, you know, I'm the guy who keeps everything in order, and I should have seen stuff, you know, and I didn't, and you just didn't show any signs of it.
No.
He seemed grumpy, to be honest with you. I'm like, you know, it's like not too personable, but that's
Right.
the most I got out of him. People say that about me to my wife. He's grumpy. But I'm the biggest teddy bear there is, you know, and it's like, it bothered me a lot, Jen. And I apologize, I missed those signs, you know.
Oh, don't apologize, because I'm going to tell you something. There's a lot of people like you that do feel the same way. And one of the most emotional ones for me was, it was the year after we were in court. Well, it was a few months after we were in court, and there was an award show on. And this is when domestic violence was really coming to the forefront, and they were talking a lot about it. And so they did a tribute to domestic violence. And I'll never forget that I had a neighbor that texted me. She was a neighbor when we lived in New Bedford. And she said, there's a show on right now, the Emmy Awards or whatever it is. She said, and they're doing a thing for domestic violence. She said, I will never forget your screams and the fact that I never helped you. And I said, don't feel that way, because you
can't help
me.
it.
I
know
know,
what she's
but
saying. Like it
right.
bothered. When I wrote it down, I just wrote my story, and I knowing someone that happened to, I wish I could have helped. And it's like it bothers people too. Like, and that's
It
so
does.
selfish for me to be upset.
Right.
Because God, you feel bad. What the hell? She went through all this crap. Well,
Right.
who cares what you feel bad? You know what I mean? But that's the other side to this. Your family, your mom, your dad. I would be broken inside if I knew my little girl had gone through all this. You know, it's.
I think for me, I don't feel bad about any of that. I don't feel like anyone should have helped me or anyone could have helped me. I truly don't. I feel as though I'm grateful to be alive, to be honest with you.
Yes.
I mean, every day to me is great and is a blessing, because I am still here to even talk. So to me, that's number one. But I never feel like there was anything anyone could do. I think because I was so afraid and because I was in so much fear, I feared for everybody else. Like,
You get into protection mode. You worried about your kids. You worried about your family.
I mean, you worry
You
about
just
everybody
sacrifice
else
yourself.
except yourself.
Man, you're so damn strong. Jeez. Dawn Andrews, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but it sounds like it. She's writing in. She's saying your foundation is a blessing. Your story is riveting, and thank you for sharing. You're brave. Your program designed for only girls and women, which is a great question.
No, it isn't. We do help a lot of men as well. More and more men are coming to the forefront with domestic violence. So yes, it's open to everybody.
My wife's mean to me. She made me work do too much today at the house. Now my wife's perfect. Do you do a lot of work with alternative communities, the LGBT community? Have you come across that at all?
A little bit. We've done some stuff with the hearing impaired. We did do a couple projects last year with hearing impaired, and we actually had a great interview with a girl that was doing some research for that. So we're kind of collaborating with a lot of others. We do a lot of work with the homeless as well, because what most people don't realize is that
They're homeless for a reason.
And not only that, but our domestic violence shelters are full. I mean, I can call every single morning at 9 a.m. to look for a bed for a specific victim, and there's no beds anywhere here in Massachusetts. So the next place that they go to is a homeless shelter. So we do work a lot with the homeless as well, because a lot of the women that are on the streets are domestic violence victims. People don't realize that, but they are.
Yeah, it's a fact.
It is.
It's a definite fact. You know, you look at these people that are homeless, and they have stories too.
Not the panhandlers, but the homeless.
And it could be a panhandler. Maybe
Yeah, it
that's
could.
their last
Right.
ditch resort. Trust me, I'm against the panhandlers because for my own reasons. But you never know. Maybe they went through what you went through. You know, and that's all they know.
That's why I don't judge anybody, because like you said, you saw me and you wouldn't have known. And there's a lot of people like
God,
me
I
walking
can't even
the
look
streets.
at you when you say that right now.
But there's a lot of people walking around just like me that are more worried about what would happen to you if you did know.
What happens now? Is he still in prison? Is he out?
He isn't. So
How
he
long?
is out. So
What were the charges? What did he get found guilty of? And how long of a sentence? Because we are going to start hammering judges here pretty soon.
I hope so, because this is a very unfortunate situation. Because he pled guilty, so that we didn't have an opportunity to go on the stand. He did plead guilty. He received 2.5 years, 18 months of which he did. He was supposed to receive an ankle bracelet when he came out. So in the meantime of me coming forward, there was a woman that, as I said, the first time I went to the police station, there were 2 more women after me. So there was another woman, and she did come forward, and he was found guilty in her trial. So
Did they run a concurrent?
they ran them concurrent.
Oh, gosh.
They sure did. So he went from having a 2.5-year sentence with me and a 4-year sentence with her to getting out in March of this past year, which really messed our lives up quite a bit, to be quite frank.
You weren't ready for it.
No, we were ready for October of next year. His release date was October of 18. We all went to all of the parole hearings. And ironically, the last parole hearing he had, they denied him parole and eligibility for future parole because they found him unremorseful. And then they released him 6 months later.
So he's unremorseful, and he still gets released 6 months later on a
Yes.
concurrent sentence.
Yes.
And that was in Bristol County, correct?
One was in Bristol County and the other one was in Rhode Island.
So the Rhode Island case, they just
The Rhode Island
cleared
case
it out
came
and
after, yeah.
time served over here.
Yep.
We'll have to talk to.
He did a little bit of time over in Rhode Island, but he
Island.
didn't do. He should have finished in October 18. So no, we weren't prepared at all.
What services are out there now for you that he's out and he's this dangerous and unremorseful? Is there anything for a woman that once her abuser gets out of jail, to any services besides a phone to call 911? Is there something that you can do? Do you have a protective order at the moment?
We have protective orders for what they're worth. They're a piece
They're
of
a piece
paper.
of
I
paper.
personally don't think they're worth anything.
Yes, exactly.
Both my sons and I, we actually have lifetimes. So, I mean, for the boys, they'll have to redo it when they're 18. But we do have lifetimes. We do not go by those at all because we don't feel that they're, depending on the person. Restraining orders are made for law-abiding citizens. Someone that
I tell
receives
everyone
that's a
that
law-abiding citizen.
That deadbolt on the door is just for a law-abiding citizen. 'Cause any
Exactly.
criminal can kick it.
Absolutely. And if you want something bad enough and he wants to come after us, he's going to. That piece of paper is not going to stop him. I did start this whole thing to create an army for myself and the boys, and I've been pretty successful at creating an army.
You have a good support system in your area?
We do. We
Immediate
have.
area?
Well, we do. I mean, the Fairhaven Police Department is amazing. I could never talk enough about them. They
Awesome.
truly saved our lives, start to finish. And today, I know that we are very protected. Our school systems are very protected. Everyone that is around us that has anything to do with us is very aware that there's an opportunity. If there's an opportunity for him to get to us, he's probably going to take it.
I've never gotten so many comments on my show.
Yay.
I knew I would. We've streamed at good numbers here, and we're talking about guys like Scott Maderis, the guy I played softball with. He watches a lot, and I just said good game to the guy a lot, at softball, but I've never really hung out with the kid. And I know he's a good kid because we have mutual friends. By far the best guest ever to be on this show. Wow. Incredible woman. All exclamations, all uppercase. God bless you, Jen.
Thank you.
Then we got Erin Elizabeth. You are an inspiration to all women, Jen. I love you, girl. I don't know if you know her.
I do know her.
And then Megan asks the Chris Resendes question. Not even a question, just it is what it is. I know the answer to it. I don't know if you're comfortable to talk about it. Do you have your license to carry?
Hell yeah, I do.
Okay.
Absolutely. And as you know, I reached out to you about training Hunter. And my children are trained as well because we know there's going to come a day where he's going to come knocking at our door. So
You just
yes.
know that.
There's not
freaking terrible.
Well, here's the thing: is that
Well,
there was a lot that went back and forth, and the words, "Is she fucking crazy? She will be looking over her shoulder for the rest of her life." When those words got back to me,
You know.
I knew right from the start that I was taking a risk and coming forward. But eventually, I figured he's either going to kill me one way or the other. I'm going to kind of leave that in God's hands and pray that it doesn't happen. And we try to protect ourselves the absolute best we can.
Gosh. Kristen Giovanni, you're amazing. Nick Requena, that guy should have been euthanized. I agree 1,000%.
Yeah, me
Nobody should ever. That's a monster. That's a terrorist. We
Well,
throw the word terrorist around.
But that is.
very, very liberally in this country right now, you're a victim of terrorism. Your life, you were terrorized by this individual. Your children are terrorized by this individual. It's the textbook definition of terrorism.
Absolutely. And the things, they go on. And again, I was one of 6 victims for this one person.
That's
so
nuts.
That's another thing we're working on is legislation, because I do believe that if you are accused or if you are convicted of domestic violence more than once, that you should be on a registry, because there is a lot of
Have you
other
approached
women.
any local legislators on
I
this?
haven't, because we've been working on the Big Brother, Big Sister, so that was coming along. We always have a lot of big things going on.
I tore a couple of their asses last episode on their stupid pay raise they gave themselves, but I think we can figure.
So we should start working with them and make them.
Yeah, we can. That extra pay, guys. You know who you are. This is something that's got to be taken care of.
I think it's very important.
This is something that, I knew this was going to be a powerful show, and I knew that I was going to be shaken, and I knew that I was going to get teary-eyed. And you didn't. It was way stronger than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to have you back on all the time.
Anytime.
All the time.
Anytime.
This is something that we need to get you in the schools. I'm going to talk to Mayor Mitchell. I'm going to give him your contact information. We do a lot of work with Chief Cadero in New Bedford. I'm reaching out to Dartmouth PD. We got to get your story out there, and we got to get you involved with the towns, and just your passion and your story. We got to help others deal with this, because this can't happen anymore.
No, it can't. And I think the most impact that I have on people and why I keep doing what I do is that I always start every one of my speaking engagements with that impact statement, because that's when I was most vulnerable and that's when I was at my worst. And yet people see me today and they see the strong woman before them, so they now understand that they can go from that to this. It can happen. It's a matter of making it happen.
Jen Souza trying to make me feel good. We went to school with
She's saying
Jen.
we're not that old.
She said, thank you for sharing your story, Jen, which we knew that was coming. You make such a difference in so many lives, what you do. Even tonight, I guarantee you saved somebody tonight. I just know that.
Yep, I do too.
Know that you saved at least one person today. And then she threw a P.S. I'm a fan of your show, Chris. And I know you are, because you watch every week, Jen, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to get your kids' classroom size down. I promise you, I'm not stopping. Very passionate, seems like a very strong woman. She doesn't seem like it, Kevin. She is. Trust me, I know. Please, any upcoming events that we can plug?
Basically, the most thing to plug right now is just that video blog. And otherwise, start looking for when that Big Brother, Big Sister comes out, because that's our main focus right now, other than the typical work that we're doing in the community anyway.
Okay, sounds good. What are we doing, cast, Josh? Time to pay the bills, Jen. Mario. Good old Mario.
Good old Mario.
Cask and Pig Kitchen Ale House, and is hosting their first annual Boars and Brews Challenge for the month of October. They challenge you to consume 26 beers, 5 signature pork dishes. Sign up begins on October 1st. For completing the Boars and Brews Challenge, you will receive a personalized t-shirt, a 2017 Boars and Brews mug, a Cask and Pig Beer Club card, valid for 1 year, and your name will be registered to win many prizes, which include and are not limited to Patriots, Celtics, Bruins tickets. Check out the event. Mayor Lang, how are you, sir?
Good, thanks very much.
All right. You're going to be a great guest. I've been looking forward to having you, but you're going to follow a tough guest,
Oh,
yeah.
I heard
You
that.
just, what an amazing woman, what an amazing story. And we're going to have to follow up with you. I almost feel guilty that you're coming up behind her.
And I don't envy myself.
Yeah. You, as a prosecutor, former prosecutor, some of the stuff you heard out there while she was talking must have struck a nerve.
Well, it did. I started with the DA's office back in 1978, and for 12 years, I left in 1990. I started under DA Tierney and then with DA Pina. The early period of time when I worked as a young ADA, I also did work for the Women's Center as a pro bono attorney, and had an awful lot of cases that involved domestic relations and violence, as well as some very terrible child abuse cases. So I know how that affects everyone in the city, affects their lives permanently.
That's a scar that will never heal.
It's an indelible mark that you have, and if you work in that area, you're doing God's work. If you're involved in a situation where you need help, you've got to call out. The Women's Center, I think, is a
Great resource.
great resource in the city to begin to try and get some help and healing. So I think that, and this is Domestic Violence Month in the state.
It is.
And at the end of the month, there'll be a ceremony down at the I'm trying to think, the Unitarian Church on the corner
yes.
on the corner of Union and County. I hope everyone gets there. Watch the newspaper. It's usually the last week of October. It's important to go and express your support. The other thing is that it usually starts with a march from City Hall to the Unitarian Church. I'd urge everyone to watch again the newspaper and make sure that you get there and express your support for victims, as well as the kids who are victims, even if they haven't been actually
Her
assaulted
children,
in
I
some way.
didn't get into that if they were abused or not, but what they saw was enough abuse for any human being to be scarred for life. Let's start over. I'm sorry, this was such a powerful segment that
I understand.
you
It's very
came in
important.
right after that, and it's just a topic that we can go on and on about. I do really believe that Jen saved a few lives tonight.
Oh, no
I
doubt.
promise you she did. Guys, New Bedford Guide, we have a special guest. I should have started with this. The way it works is we fly in guests. They just come sit in the next chair, and we're live. I didn't get to properly introduce our next guest. Distinguished man in the community. Mayor Lang was the 37th mayor of New Bedford. He served from 2006 to 2012, and many do believe in the city that if he wanted to, he could have still been mayor. What made you decide to step away at that time?
I always felt that I had term limits in my head, and I knew, I've always been in the private sector. I did public service, as I said, with the DA's office.
yes.
I've done a lot of pro bono work, so I believe in public service. I thought the city was at a crossroad. I thought we had some very, very difficult issues, and there was a mayor's race that involved. I think when I got in, I was the 12th candidate. I got in very late. I got in at the first full week of August, and the primary was maybe 6 weeks later. The general was a month after that.
I remember that vividly because at the time, my ex-girlfriend at the time grew up with your son, and she helped out with your children were very involved and got the youth to vote for you at the time.
Yeah, we had a lot of help. I
Yeah.
appreciated that very much. And tell your ex-girlfriend I said
We
thank
don't
you very
talk
much.
now, but she's
All right,
a
well,
great person, and I'm sure
yes.
your son has.
So at some point, though, I think I decided that I thought I could drive the debate. I could talk about issues that I felt people in their kitchens were talking about.
Absolutely.
And just move the race. I didn't know that I was going to win, but I wanted to move the race. I wanted people to understand that one major issue that brought me in was crime. So I wanted people to understand in the community that if crime happens anywhere in New Bedford, it affects all of us.
Absolutely.
So you can't segregate it by neighborhoods and say, well, it's not happening to your kids or your neighborhood or your family, so don't worry about it. If it happens to anyone, it happens to everyone. And I basically thought that this is an issue that needs to be discussed, brought to the forefront, and we need a safe city. We need to have our kids out at school, in the streets, safe. We need our grandparents safe. We need ourselves to be safe. Public safety is the number one responsibility of a local government.
Yes, sir.
And you have to start, I believe in four legs of a table, Chris. So I believe that the city, in any given day, the most important issue may be public safety. But an equally important issue at any given time is education. And then an equally important issue is neighborhood revitalization. And an equally important issue is economic development. And all of that is involved every day with governmental type of policy and services. And it's everything, when I say neighborhood revitalization, it's everything from TVs sitting in front of a house to improper disposal of trash, to potholes, to lights, to blighted areas, whatever it might be. I think you're defined by your worst neighborhood, not your best.
Absolutely.
So I need to bring up every neighborhood in the city, right?
Absolutely.
So I just, my wife and I talked about it. My wife's name is Gig. She's terrific, she's my 99% better half. And said, I would like to get involved in public service and try and drive this debate. And everyone full-heartedly said, yeah, we need to do this, because if we don't begin to make a stand in the city that we live in, believe in, when would you ever do it? So that's why I ran. But I also knew when I ran that at a certain point, I didn't want to become an elected. I didn't want to become a class of people who somehow define themselves by the office they hold. So I figured 4 years, maybe 6, and then I need to get back to my private life. I need to get back to my law practice, to my family, and that's what I did.
I'm a firm believer in term limits. The forefathers of our country believed in citizen statesmen, which is what you just described.
Well, I don't know how much of a statesman I was, but I'm definitely a citizen, and I definitely believe that everyone needs to contribute. And I also, I thought of it a different way. I thought I had a farm. I'm going to leave the farm, go answer a call, try and help. If I'm elected, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to throw myself fully into it, my family, and then I got to get back to the farm. Otherwise, you won't recognize me. I need to keep my feet on the ground and be true to who I am, and that's why I said I've got to get back.
I commend you on that, because the problem with politics is that the men and women who tend to sign up start with good intention. And I'm not saying all of them fall off that track. But with time in politics, people change. People lose themselves. People lose the vision that they had when they first started. They become jaded by the system. And I commend you, because in my mind, I've never been in politics, but from the outside looking in, I've seen it with local politicians as well as on the national level. You see these guys and they start off one man and one woman, and they become a different man and different woman within years of just turning stale and doing the whole politician thing.
So you have to be connected all the time to the voters who
Absolutely.
You work for. You have to believe in things other than the quest to rise up the ladder or whatever. I mean, you have to believe in things and you have to stay true, right? But the other thing about it is that I think the status quo is dead. And right after I left office, I gave a talk in which I said, I think the status quo in the U.S., in the localities, the state governments, is dead. We need new models. We're based on a model that existed in literally the middle part of the last century.
Yes.
And it worked great. Those models work great. But now you've got a situation, 21st century,
Totally
everything's
different.
changing dramatically, including our demographics. We need to have a society that is responsive to the conditions we have in the country and move forward again. And I think that's what the elected officials now have to strive for. They have to build new models to solve problems, new solutions to problems that either existed and we solved them before with an old model that doesn't work anymore, or new problems that come up as society changes. So I'm very optimistic about the city. I'm optimistic about our state. I'm absolutely optimistic about the country. But I think it depends on people working together. Spotting problems are easy. Coming up with a solution,
Is the
getting
hard
people
part.
together is the hard part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm optimistic about it, but I think
I am as
everybody's
well.
got to be involved.
And it's very easy, and I tell everybody the low-hanging fruit is to find the negative and just pick at it.
Well, hit it like a piñata every day, right?
Every day.
It does no good, though.
And we're going to do that right now with the next question.
Perfect. Perfect.
We're on the 8th murder, I believe, which is the highest in years. Being a former prosecutor, being a former mayor, being involved with judges currently, do you have any ideas, thoughts on what we can do to change the atmosphere and the culture in New Bedford when it comes to this gang violence that's starting to sprout up again? It's a youth issue as well.
Right.
We're looking at a lot of these 20, 22-year-olds. It's the youth that's actually involved in this. Any fresh thoughts on what we can do or ideas to work in conjunction with the courts as well as the DA's office? It's got to become a collaborative to fix this problem. What do you think about that?
When I took office, we were exactly at the point I think the city is beginning to drift to now, which was a situation where we have an awful lot of young people who are completely disaffected. The gangs right now, I think, have proliferated. we have a situation where there seems to be, you know, in society today, a little bit less of a regard for law, respect, order. So the way, you know, I always look at things to start with is people say, well, that's a societal problem. I say it's a societal problem which has a lot of different unexpected or unintended impacts. But if it's a societal problem, let's look at it, see what it is, and go from there. So the first thing is, I don't think our schools are teaching our youngest, you know, students all the way up through high school what it's about to be a good citizen and making sure that they are held to some accountability to be a good citizen, right? So it means teaching. I don't believe in teaching to the test. I don't believe that you're defined by
A standardization.
a standardization test, a number on your head. You know, for a long time when I would talk about the MCAS or talk about, you know, these standardized tests, I would slap my head like that. People would say, how does he do that? It's because there's nothing in it, right?
Yeah.
But the point is that you label a kid in 4th grade, or you label a kid at an early age, they really begin to see that there's not going to be any place in society. So I believe that every kid is valued, every kid can make a contribution. So you start with that. If you're looking to change the attitude of kids, right from wrong, nonviolence, always nonviolence, talking things through, finding mentors, having the families involved in the schools, it has to start at the neighborhood level, house-to-house level. In addition, I think we have a great police department. I know when I was mayor, we had a great police department. I still believe in them greatly. But you have to support your police. You have to interact with them. You have to tell them exactly what's troubling you in a neighborhood. You have to let them know if there are certain individuals in the neighborhood, men or women, that may need a visit because of illegal activities, whatever. You have to pick up that phone, the anonymous tip line, whatever, lay out what you know so that the police can go in there and help make it a better neighborhood. Now, once the police make an arrest, obviously, it's going to go to the courts. So the courts can't be doctrinaire and say to everybody, okay, that's 2.5 years or that's 6 months, whatever. Each sentence has to be tailored so that when there's not only the punishment, there's not only what would be called the rehabilitation, but when someone gets out of prison, rather than have them come back into the city and continue the recidivist type of pattern that we have, you have to begin to figure out how do you have some sort of realistic pathway so that we can get them out from the track of being, your day-to-day type of recidivist. As far as the violent crimes go, I have no tolerance for that whatsoever. So I was a very big supporter in mandatory sentences for illegal guns. You have an illegal gun on your person.
Yes, sir.
I don't think there's any plea bargaining. I don't think we're talking about, well, maybe this is an excitable boy. We shouldn't pile on. You got an illegal gun. It's an on and after, no matter what.
What do you think about bringing in the feds on all gun charges into the city?
Well, I don't know that
having the ATF working in conjunction, get like the Attorney General's office federally involved. They used to do it.
Right.
In certain states, but then it became they're treating certain communities indiscretional and almost racist fashion.
So how I would answer that is simply I believe in every alphabet agency in law enforcement working together with our local police, getting intelligence information from our sheriff's department, working with the state police or ICE or alcohol, tobacco, firearms. Working with the AG's office, the U.S. Attorney's office, wiretaps, whatever it takes to break the back of organized crime within our city. Now, organized crime, you think of, Elliot Ness, but the fact is that if you're out there, you have a drug distribution network, you're involved in organized crime. But not every case is going to be the kind of case that the U.S. Attorney's office is going to be able to take and say we can prosecute. There's no excuse for our own DA's office, for our own AG's office, not to be able to take an illegal gun type of a crime and make sure you prosecute it right through the end. You got to get guns off the street. You got to, quite honestly, you have to get illegal knives off the street.
Yeah.
I mean, these quick.
And we just had a murder with a knife, so.
Right, the quick disposable type of weapon you really have to keep your eyes on. The police on a day-to-day basis, I think, do a great job. I see them constantly. I know a great majority of the department. They do a great job. The community policing, I think everyone believes in. You got to get out of the vehicle. You got to make friends, influence people, find out what's going on in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it means every day. It can't be once every
No.
couple of weeks. It can't be a situation
They don't
where,
take you seriously. A community will not look at you seriously
Right.
if you're popping in once a quarter.
Right, so our police have to be equipped and supported in a way that 365 days, 24 hours a day, they're out there keeping us safe. They're out there making friends, they're building up relationships, and you're isolating the people who are involved in A, criminal enterprise, and then B, the people who would be willing to, hold a gun to somebody and pull the weapon or plunge a knife into somebody. So I think it's a law enforcement issue when it comes to that level, but it's a societal issue from day one. When the boy or girl is brought home from the hospital, you want to have a decent family unit, you want to have a decent school system, you want to have social services involved so that you produce great citizens.
It starts at home, and I've been pushing this. I'm gonna run out of time tonight, so my murder monologue, as I called it, really it's a rant about how society's not responsible to raise your children. People, the family structure and the lack thereof is what's to blame for these young people nowadays. It all starts at a young age, and it's a generational issue where we're already on the third generation of fatherless sons, and it continues. It's a snowball effect.
And the interesting thing is, in a place like New Bedford, it's not defined by a demographic. It's defined basically by a poverty level. So the poverty level is really the key. You have to give people opportunity. If I tell you there's probably never going to be an opportunity for you to have a legitimate job, but I'll send you a check each month, doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No.
Everybody should be valued. Everybody should be involved. So it's, put it this way, you and I tonight can't resolve the violence issue in the city,
No.
but I'll tell you right now, the people can. And if you know what your son or daughter is doing and you know who they're involved with and you don't think it's right, sit down and talk with them and then pick up the phone. And you're saving somebody's life if you pick up the phone.
You're saving your own kid's life,
And
probably.
whether it's your pastor or whether it's a police officer or whatever, and say, you got to sit down and talk to my son or daughter. We have a real issue here.
Absolutely.
I used to give a speech real quick where if you have a gun, your actuarial table goes way down. If you have a knife, it goes way down. If we send you to Walpole, it goes way down. So if you really care about your kids and believe that, that you want them to live long, fruitful lives, you got to make sure that they're good citizens.
Hey, Asaya, I got a question for you on this topic. Being a young man, I brought you onto the show to hear your perspective when we have guests like Mayor Lang. The whole stop snitching stuff that went on during his term. Your generation, you do realize that if you're not in the game, if you're not in a gang, you're not selling drugs, if you're raising your family and living the right way, as I know you're trying to do the right thing, and that's why you're here with me today. Do you see snitching as snitching if you're not in the game, or is it just all in general, no snitching?
I see it as,
Just be honest.
I feel like if it wasn't, if I'm not involved in it, then I just keep my mouth shut. Like,
So no snitching no matter what. But
If-
you know,
if
like
it's-
you
if it's
now
somebody
say you
that-
have a gun. Now you see a kid with a gun, and they're doing gang stuff, and you know they're gonna go do a drive-by. But you're not involved, but you just know about it. I'm not saying you would. I actually don't even want you to answer this question because I don't want to have you labeled as one way or the other. But I just want you to think about this. You could quietly tell somebody, the cops, without anybody knowing, especially if you're not involved, that you're either going to save A, somebody from getting shot, or B, somebody from going to jail that you care about for the rest of your life. And that's something that we got to push on your generation.
like that's what I feel like is different. Like I feel like, I mean, everybody's equal, but if it's somebody, if I'm involved, like if it's somebody I love, like my brother, or my sister, like I would tell somebody about that because that's somebody that I love. But like I feel like if I don't know them and it's somebody that it's
Not my business, not my
yeah.
worry. What do you think about that, Mailing?
I think the pain across the community resonates, whether it's your brother or sister or whether it's someone 4 miles away.
I
think
agree
that
with you
People have to
wholeheartedly.
step forward and care about each other.
Now, Asaya, this last murder, we had his nephew on our show last week, your friend, Nigel.
Mhm.
Don't you think Nigel now would look back and say, man, if I could have helped him, I would? He's
I
never
do.
going to see that man again. You see what I'm trying to get to?
Yeah.
You see what I'm trying to say? And that night we dropped Nigel off. You especially said, man, go in the house.
Yeah.
Right? You get it. There's nothing good out there, man. And you gotta take that road that we're talking about as a youth in New Bedford and really push it on your friends and be a man about things. And you're the guy down the street that you don't care about, someday it could come back and affect you. That's what you don't realize as a youth. You know what I mean? Right now it's like, oh, it's none of my business. But it could be your business. It could be his son that you're friends with later that gets affected by it, or my son that you're friends with my wife and I'm friends with you. Imagine that now.
Yeah.
How would you feel? You got to get that through your generation. You got to become a leader and show. We gonna need more guys your age to do what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Let's move on, Mayor Lang. You talked about the police, and it seems like you're an advocate for the police. But part of the issue with the police is the funding. They're down a lot of officers. Your ideas of community policing involve a lot of man hours and a lot of time and a lot of specialized units. Are there any savvy ways that you can, the city's budget's strapped, you know that, you've been there before, that we can get more funding and not jeopardize funding from the feds?
First of all, when, I unfortunately, I was mayor during the really
The recession.
very, very difficult recession, right? But my feeling is that you set priorities in your budget. So police, fire, EMS are going to be a number one priority for you, because that's that whole public safety area, and those are the people you want to make sure that if I'm asking people to pay taxes, I'm going to make sure that we can protect them. I'm also going to make sure that we can, secure their property, their lives if there's a fire or, God forbid, medical emergency. So I think you stack up your priorities. But I also can tell you that there seems to be a discussion in the past, few years that we shouldn't rely on federal aid. And I sit there and I say to myself, the federal money is our money. We send it to Washington. If I'm not the priority,
supposed to
of
come back
federal
down to
aid,
us.
yeah, I want that money. I want a percentage of that money to make sure I can do police, fire, schools. I send a lot of money to the state. I want to make sure I get it back for schools. I want everything that I need, if I'm the mayor of the city, to make sure that the city is safe, prosperous, has good education, right? And I don't need it by saying, okay, we'll send more money to the state or the Fed. They can waste their money, and then we'll tax you higher. In New Bedford, I don't believe in it.
We're
I
already
don't believe in
strapped out.
2.5. I think the budget is how you set the budget. I read things where people say, well, there's only 14% or 16% in the budget that's discretionary. That's nonsense. The only thing that I know of the budget that we have to absolutely pay for are things like pension, health care, and then our bonding requirements, whatever they might be. And then the rest of it basically is discretionary. You decide, you make specific decisions. You have a net school spending. I completely agree with the mayor that the net school spending formula is outdated. But I also know that we always met net school spending, and we weren't spending $125, $130 million on the school system. And you lose control. When you send money to an independent department, you lose control of how it's spent. That's all taxpayer money, though. So I think there's no excuse to say, well, we can't afford police, we can't afford fire, because that's really when it all comes down to it. Talk about people with regrets, right? Your city government doesn't fund its police or fire or EMS appropriately. That'll be the biggest regret you ever have.
Well, they already are.
Well, it's got to turn around. I used to say that I will take the king's ransom that we have in this city and spend it to save lives and preserve property. And that has to be the number one priority. People band together for safety. That's why we have government. You got to put your money to make sure people are safe. And the challenges today, every day they change. So you have to make sure that you are anticipating, you're equipped, and ready to protect people.
And it's definitely fluid. You said you got to provide. The current administration is shutting down blackouts, they call them, for the fire department.
Right. So during the recession, I had to do the same thing. The thing I don't believe in, though, is nighttime blackouts. I never did it, ever. Because everything changes. Every intangible changes if you shut down a fire station at night. It changes for the citizen, it changes for the firefighters. So a daytime brownout or a daytime shutdown of a piece, you can work through. Firefighters aren't happy about it. I wasn't happy about it, but you can work through it. Once it hits, dusk,
that's it.
You can't shut it down because you can't predict what's going to happen. In a black, the night time in fighting a fire.
We had horrible turnout, 9.4% voter turnout for the last primaries. I had Manny DeBrito, who, lifelong resident, is trying his hardest. He's new at the job.
Right.
Him and I are actually meeting next week. Mind you, I'm not even a New Bedford resident, but we're going to meet next week to try to figure out what we're going to do to get those numbers up. I've called several legislative members of this area region, city councils, Brian Gomes I've talked to, other people. What are we going to do?
All right, so first, I want to tell you something that's really important, and that's that I don't know that 9% turned out. The turnout was way too low. But I don't know that we have 57,000 people registered in our city, like I don't think we had 55 when I was mayor. The list, in other words, if you start with that large number, whatever the turnout is, it's going to be different than if you actually had the actual number. So we have a turnout problem. But it drives me nuts when people bank on the turnout, the low turnout number, when I don't really know if it's that number whatsoever. In a big election, it means something. So they say, well, even in the presidential election, we only had a 57% turnout in 2016. If the number is inflated, though, our turnout might have been 65, 70%. Who the heck knows? So rather than focus on the number, let's focus on the problem of turnout, because everyone should vote. It's our number one civic responsibility.
It is.
If you're an American citizen, you got to go down, register to vote, and then you have to turn out to vote. You have to educate yourself on the issues and go vote. So why don't people vote? One way you can say is, well, it's not convenient, but we're open 13 hours. And if you can't take your kids and run down to the polling place, and they're all over the city, right? So if you can't get to your neighborhood polling place and vote, it's because you're not focused on the responsibility. If you want to say, if you care how much your taxes are, how your schools are being run, how the police, fire, EMS is being run, whether you think the city's priorities are right, you got to vote. You got to weigh in. You're a stockholder. You got to go vote. You're paying your taxes. You're a stockholder. Exercise your right to vote.
That's your say.
We have kids all over the world dying to preserve our right to vote. They're our neighbors' kids. They may be our kids. To respect them, you got to go vote. So I don't, the idea that someone says, I don't care, it doesn't matter, it matters. One vote matters a lot. So whose responsibility is it to turn out the vote? Well, obviously the media's got to pop it and let them know it's out there and cover the races so people are looking at a race and following it, number one. But number two, the candidates. You got to excite people. You got to explain to them why it's important to vote. By the way, if you're part of the status quo and you figure if I start talking about it, people will say, maybe I don't need you anymore. That may be one way why we don't have vigorous debates. We should have a debate in every ward. We should have 6 debates around the mayor's race. There's no excuse. When I beat Mayor Kalis, that night I challenged him to a debate in each ward, and we did it. I had 13 debates in 2005. I debated in 7. I debated in 9. You got to debate. If you debate and you're doing a good job, it's going to come out great. If you're not, maybe you'll learn something to have you do a better job.
Absolutely.
You're not going to lose your election because you're out there meeting the voters and being involved.
No. We, our New Bedford guy, Mike's done an excellent job. I don't know if you follow on Facebook. He's had every single candidate, and he's granted them, every single one of them, the opportunity to debate. And a lot of them have taken up on the challenge, which is a refreshing thing. You can watch the debate on your phone these days through Facebook.
Right.
A lot of people are watching us right now on their phone, which is a wonderful thing. We have the technology, and New Bedford Guide is doing that. But I don't really see the excitement that you just had in the past 30 seconds from a lot of these candidates. It seems like a few of them need some of your fire.
I want them. If you're a citizen in the city, I need to know how you feel. The way you can tell me is make an appointment with me, see me on the street, but especially get out and vote. Let me know. Okay, it's a referendum on how I'm doing. So if I'm a candidate, I want to engage the people.
And I know you're sincere about that, because you may not remember when you were mayor, I ran into you at Stop and Shop one time, and you gave me a card, and you said, anything you need, anything you want to talk about, let me know. And I said, man, I don't even live in New Bedford, and this guy's asking me if I have any input in his city or any questions, I can call him.
You must have had a giant grocery order or something.
It was amazing.
I figured a big extended family. Let's.
I swear, you needed the 6 votes I could provide.
Right.
It was.
That's what you got to do. You work for everybody in the city. You really have
I was impressed.
Take that.
I'm not joking. I haven't talked to you since. I called you out of the blue for this interview, so it's not like you and I are lifelong friends. I don't know. I know people that worked for you, and that's about as close of a relationship that we've had,
Of course, the sad thing is anybody asks me to give my opinion or try and
it was easy.
Educate, I'm happy to do it.
It was easy.
And I think this is a great opportunity, for me to give my point of view on things. I really appreciate you calling me.
Oh, that's awesome. We got two more huge issues. One of them I'm going to take a break before the last question because 7 people have asked the question. You probably already know what the question is, but we're not going to touch upon that because I want to talk to you about the New Bedford Forward organization that gathered 2,500 signatures to get the term moved from 2 years to 4 years. Now, if it passes, it will not take place on this election. It'll be 2019. It'll take effect. So this is almost a two-part question being separated by our sponsor. How do you feel about the term itself? This is a multi-part question, going from 2 years to 4 years. The pros and cons, and part of the pros and cons, when you were mayor and you had a 2-year term, you left on your own terms. But say you had it on your last one. Do you see a mayor on his term starting a huge project, a parking garage or a windmill farm or whatever, the maritime, and then not being able to see it through, his baby in the city? Why don't we touch upon all those issues?
So first of all, I'm completely against changing our structure of government and moving from a 2-year mayor's term to a 4-year mayor's term. I think a mayor's got to be involved, in touch with the people all the time. As I said before, you work for the people. It doesn't make sense to me to isolate the mayor and say, we'll give you a 2-year term. And I'm going to go through all the reasons I've heard in a moment. And I'll tell you why each one so far that I've heard is complete bunk. So the first thing I want to say to you is, all I did was start projects that may have taken 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, whatever, and pass them through to the next administration. So whether it was the Harbor Walk on the dike, or whether it's the Harbor Walk going to be on Acushnet Avenue, or whether it happened to be Route 18, or whether it happened to be the solar projects around the city, or anything else that's taken place with an overlap, that I was involved with, I was very happy to do that work, get it going, and then pass it through. It's the only thing that counts. If you're thinking of it as Scott Lang is mayor, the day I leave, let someone else start from scratch, you haven't done your job, and it doesn't even make any sense. There's got to be continuity. It's a handoff. I handed off all these projects to Mayor Mitchell. He's finished many of them. It's fantastic. It's great. He'll hand off projects to someone else. There's got to be a continuity within the government, and that's very important. So the idea that if you don't have a 4-year term, you don't have a vision, then don't run for mayor, because nothing gets done in 4 years. Government takes 2, 4, 6, 10, whatever it might be, 20 years to get something done.
Let me just cut in real fast. You did exactly what I wanted you to do, and I'm glad you did. A lot of people don't give you any credit for Route 18, the solar farms, or any of the projects that you had mentioned. And I just want people to know that those started well before they were finished.
But and there was projects that were started by Mayor Tierney that finished
Absolutely.
under Kalis, and
People
Kalis
don't
that
see
finished
that, though,
under me. It keeps moving.
People only see the ribbon cutting.
Yeah, and by the way, the ribbon cutting is really important, but the groundbreaking is really important. And
Absolutely.
the idea that 6 months before the groundbreaking, when you finally get that plan done and the approval going, it all makes sense. It's all important. I could tell you that I think that probably the number one project that I've seen that's taken the longest to get done, that I'm still involved with literally every day, is the train. And we will get the train. And the train started off 30 years ago with our legislators saying we want the train.
Yeah.
Eventually we'll get it. Eventually we'll
Is
get
it
it.
going to be too late?
No, it's not going to be in the year 25 if man is still alive. We're going to get it pretty soon. Within 2 or 3 years, we're going to get the train. But the point is, all of these governmental projects take time. It's like pulling a rope. And the idea that somehow if you don't have a 4-year term, you won't pull a rope is just not true. It doesn't even make sense. But let me sum up how I feel about this. You're being asked now, as a New Bedford voter, to give up your right to vote every 2 years. They're asking you to vote against voting every 2 years. I've never heard of anyone being asked to vote to give up their right to vote. We're talking about low turnout, and they're saying, so why didn't you give up your right to vote so you don't have to turn out? That's not the answer here. And moving away from accountability, from the check and balance between an election and the idea that I'm going to coast is not right. They say, well, it's going to be a situation where you always have to campaign. Well, you do campaign. You do your job every day. That's a good campaign. And people will vote for you. When I ran for mayor, I basically said, you've seen my work. If you think I'm doing a good job, please consider voting for me. Absolutely. If you don't, and no hard feelings. I wasn't born to be mayor. I got elected, I've got to earn it every day. So the idea that you wouldn't earn it every 2 years
Blown.
is not right. The other thing is, which is really important, I think, is that if you think that your mayor right now doesn't go to enough events or doesn't make time for appointments or you don't see him around or her around, what do you think it's going to be like if they're accountable once every 3.5 years to all of a sudden dust it off and say, gee, I have to
I
see
got to
the
get back
voters
into the
again?
neighborhood. Yep.
Every day you got to be out there. The idea that they want, and I mean they, because I don't know who collected the 2,500 signatures. I don't know how much they paid for signature collectors, right? When I collect signatures, I basically collect them standing at a shopping center, and it's all volunteers.
Absolutely.
Okay, I know they went out, they hired a group to go out and collect these signatures. Now, they could have tried to do a back door, which I think would be much worse. So move forward saying, let's do a referendum. Makes me feel like, okay, let's go. Let's do democracy. I'm here today talking about it. I'm completely against it. People have to make their own mind up. Please consider, though, I was mayor. Running for election was not an inconvenience. It's part of the job. It's important. Raising money, if you need money, okay, should be done honestly, transparently, and you shouldn't say, well, if it was only once every 4 years, I wouldn't raise as much. I'd send out a letter and donate the money to the nonprofits. If you're doing a good job, people will vote for you.
And people will pay. People will write you a check
They'd
if they
be-
stand behind you.
They'd be happy to, and it should be limited in number, and it should be completely transparent, and
Absolutely.
it should be within the city itself.
There is a union loophole right now that's actually just got, Mass Physical Alliance, our last guest, just finally got it. The Supreme Court in Massachusetts just accepted the union loophole case, which let people, you know how your employees aren't supposed to donate so much? Well, the union guy ran for office, and then the union was giving him $15,000, you know, and it was,
You can't,
It's-
I'm
it's not
against
transparent.
bundling.
That's not-
I'm
yeah,
against
that's bundling.
Yeah, you
Absolutely.
can't bundle.
so 100% I'm with you on that, and I'm so glad you feel that way, and I couldn't articulate it that well, that the every 2 year election actually puts you back in the neighborhood and puts you back into contact with the voters.
You got to debate. It makes you a better public servant. If
Absolutely.
you're not willing to run for election, then don't run.
Absolutely. I'm going to cut you off right here. I'm going to run an ad, but I'm going to tease it first. The question that myself, you and I have discussed it over the phone yesterday, and everyone else is asking. I got 15 questions here.
Well,
Are you going to run again?
All right,
But
they're
we're
going to
gonna
ask
take-
me if I'd pay a lot for a muffler. All right.
No. We all do. They're expensive. All right, guys, we're going to do a nice Oktoberfest ad here. This weekend, rain or shine, New Bedford Oktoberfest will take place on Saturday from 3 to 11:45 on the working waterfront inside the State Pier Terminal and out on the pier located downtown New Bedford's historic park. This year will feature expanded brews and music featuring Living on a Bad Name, Craig DeMello and Friends, The Poor Men, and others. Early bird tickets are now on sale. Tickets will also be on sale at the door for just $20. Just type in New Bedford Oktoberfest in Google, and you'll find their website and a link to buy all their tickets. And we'll also provide an event link in the comments. Well, Mayor Lang, it's the question that I've heard since 2012. I talked to many people in the city. I'm friendly with your old chief of staff and all his friends. Great person. We're actually doing work through the court for his thing that he's opening up over at.
Don't hold him against me, please.
He's a great man.
We should say a shout out to, that's Bill Burns. He is a little bit under the weather today, and we
Yeah, he actually
pray
had an
that
appointment
he's
today.
well, and
Absolutely.
he's a great guy. We all love him.
He's one of the, a lot of people don't know, under the radar advocates for your area, New Bedford. That man has provided a lot for this region.
Absolutely.
Under the radar. Nobody ever knows his name. Nobody ever knows who he is or what he does. But I can guarantee you, and I know for a fact, Mayor Lang can attest to this, that man has provided New Bedford and Dartmouth and everywhere else that Senator Montigny's advocated for. He's provided tremendous service to this region.
Bill Burns is a great public servant. He's a great public servant. That's what he is. That's what he's done. That's what he's dedicated his life to. Terrific guy, great human being, great public servant.
Now that we're done washing and waxing Billy's bald head, Something I'm, let's get to the real
He's a
question.
young, good-looking guy, too, by the way.
He is, always
Single,
has
young,
been.
good-looking guy. Yeah.
And he has a better personality than he looks, too.
Absolutely, we can attest to
Yeah,
that.
good family guy, good everything.
Takes a while, but it's true.
He's a great man. Mayor Lang, everyone has told me, and everyone says it time and time again, you go to different walks of life, whether it's the Portuguese community, the Cape Verdean community, you've been an advocate for both, and just regular citizens in New Bedford. They said that Mayor Lang could be mayor of New Bedford anytime he decides to run again.
So first of all, I'd never take that for granted ever. So if I do run again one day, I'm gonna work as hard as I ever did, number one. Number two, I love the city. I love the people in the city. When Gig and I came to New Bedford, so just about 40 years ago, we came because we wanted a hometown for our kids. We wanted to go someplace where we would consider to be our family home. And it has worked beyond our dreams. The people are very welcoming. It's a great city, and we have an awful lot of fun here. You know, it's important to me, very important to me. You asked me before, why did I leave? I left because I have term limits in my head. I certainly miss every day working with the people. I try and keep up. But before we were talking, am I still involved? I'm involved in an awful lot of things. I try and direct any kind of goodwill or you know, grants, things like that, to different organizations in the city to help. I support our city government. I support our city councilors. I support our reps. Anybody that needs a hand, if I can lay a hand in any way, I'm happy to do it.
Absolutely.
Eventually, I'd like to get back in a public service again. When I do, I will run like a bat out of hell every day to earn votes and see if I get elected. If I don't, I'll make sure that I'm in debates, that I help drive a debate. If there's someone else who would be, you know, better suited for what, you know, position I would run for, then I'm certainly going to support them. But I'd like, you know, I'd like to see an opportunity, you know, over the next few years to take a little bit of time to think about it and think exactly what, you know, how I think I can help. But I certainly would love to go back into public service and in an elected way.
Mayor of New Bedford, yes or no?
Well, when I left City Hall, I always thought, you know, when I left City Hall, I said, well, I love doing that. And I thought to myself, I don't know that I'd ever go back to do it. The longer I've been away, the more I think that I would love to go back and run for mayor again before I drop dead. Now, what I want to just, I'm really superstitious, but what I'm also saying is that I am trying to decide how I could be helpful in public service. Certainly, we've got a great campaign right now. You have Mayor Mitchell against Charlie Perry. They're both fine guys. Let's see where, you know, where this goes for them. I'm hoping that it's good for the city.
2 years from now, we'll go from there.
2 years from now, we'll see what happens. 4 years from now, 6 years from now, I think I'm still young. By the way, the thing I want to say, Chris, which is important, I have a law office that I love. I love practicing law. I work with people every day. I try and solve people's problems. I also try and make sure that the people I work with are people that I'd want to be associated with.
Yes.
So that really every day keeps me going. My son Andy came in, so that's a good thing because it gives me an opportunity now to move away. I have Sue Weiner, who's been the backbone of the office. Jill Sabino works with me. I have really good people. So every day I'm not there. People say to me, so what do you do now? What I do now is to get up, I run to office. It's just the office I run to is at 115 Orchard Street. But I do think that at some point I want to get back. I want to try and get back into public service.
You're going to get back. And there's going to be people tonight, after you saying that you're interested and you want to get back into it, that are going to do whatever they can to make sure that you, like you just did, make it there.
So Chris, the first thing they got to do, I want them to do two things. And you got to go out and vote. You got to bring your kids, show your kids what it's like to vote. You got to pay honor to our city, our state, and our country. The kids that support it, you got to go vote.
That's part of it. You have to bring your children when you go vote at a young age. And my dad always did that.
Right, absolutely. It's fun.
And there was a reason for it, because he could have left me. And I remember a couple times where I didn't want to go, and being an immigrant that became a U.S. citizen, he found it that important to make sure that I went with him. And at the time, you don't notice it. But now as a man, you see it.
It's so important. You bring your little boys and girls and have them see what it's like. Pull them up, show them what you're doing. Let them see exactly what it is to be a citizen engaged. The other thing is get involved in your neighborhoods. The other thing is throw, when you see some kid tagging or something, if it's 50 cents, whatever it is, good cause, do it. And then last but not least, please consider, look at all the issues regarding this 2-year versus 4-year. Consider the fact that you're being asked to vote against your right to vote. Please consider the position I'm taking, which is I was mayor. I am a citizen. I've been involved in the city now for 40 years. We don't need a 4-year term for a mayor to be able to do his job, her job, have a vision, not have to campaign. You got to be involved. You got to be involved with the people. A 4-year term doesn't do it.
Isaiah.
I remember way a while back when I was in 2nd grade. You came to my school and you read the Polar Express to us. Are you still involved with like the youth now, like after being a mayor, or do you try to be involved?
So, well, being mayor gives you a tremendous opportunity that you don't normally have as a citizen. I went to every school every year and saw the kids. But what I do want to say to you that's very important is I love that. And I meet kids all over the city who say to me, I remember you came to kindergarten, you came to 7th grade, whatever. I talked about reading, I talked about nonviolence, I talked about respecting each other, loving the kids in your class, respecting your teacher, getting your parents involved. I still do that. Gig and I still sponsor every darn youth organization, every youth program we can. That's how we started, and we continue to do it. So the answer is yes. I also, whenever I see a kid, they say to me, I say, what are you doing? They say, well, I'm going to apply to a school, or I'm going to apply for a job. I say, call me at my office, tell me when I saw you, okay, call me Scott Lang, Attorney Scott Lang, call my office, send me your resume, I'll get you a letter of recommendation. If you need a phone call, I'll make a phone call. We need everybody educated, we need everybody involved. I'm not willing to walk away from any kid in this city.
Great question. All right, I'm going to have to cut you off, Mayor Lang. We
Thanks
have
for
the
having
other mayor debate going on another live stream, so we're going to cut this short, get our viewers heading that way. Again, gentlemen, ladies, please get out and vote. It is your job. And pay good mind if you want to hear, if you didn't hear anything that Mayor Lang said tonight and you just want to hear one of the cliff notes that's most important, it's about the 4-year term. What he basically said is, if you vote for 4 years, I'm going to break it down to what I see on social media. These politicians only show up during election time. Well, guess what? It's going to be a lot longer before they show up again, and your voice will not be heard as frequently if you go to the 4-year term rather than the 2-year term. It's not going to save a ton of money to the city. Don't let them push that idea on you. And it's going to keep politicians more in check, which is what we need to do. And as far as I'm concerned, term limits would be great, but we're already pushing the limit on that. Let's keep it at 2 years, and I do agree with the mayor on that one. Mayor Lang, thank you so much. I want to have you in again very shortly,
Yeah, happy to.
and an expanded format, probably around election time, so we can get an outside view, but with an inside interpretation. Again, guys, if you missed it, please go back when we post this up and watch the first half of tonight's show with Jen Blum from the Help Save Foundation. She is an amazing woman, had an amazing story. Show your children that segment. I don't care if they're middle school, high school, or older. Show your family members that segment. You may save their lives and save them from some serious torment. Please watch that. Go back and look at her Facebook page, Help Save Foundation. If you need to contact her, she is there to help you. If you cannot find information and you are in an abusive relationship, please email me at chris@NewBedfordGuide, and I will make sure immediately that I get you the proper help that you need in a way and fashion where we'll keep it discreet, and I'll make sure that you don't end up in a bad situation, or we can get you out of that bad situation. Isaiah, thank you again, buddy. You did another great job.
Yes,
I love having the youth perspective. He's doing an awesome job, everybody. Isaiah is a great asset to the New Bedford Guide. Josh Souza, the man behind everything, thank you so much. Guys, head over to our other live stream. We have the mayoral debate going on right now. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next Thursday. Have a great night. Get out and vote. Start getting involved to change your community. See you next Thursday.